And we have liftoff. So welcome everyone for the second year running. We're running the Women of Quantum webinar, and our aim is to really showcase the wonderful things that are being done by women in the field. I think that it is one of the fields, one of the technology fields where we have the privilege of enjoying much more participation from women of very different backgrounds. And the survey that we also run annually really is testament to that. I'll be sharing a bit more data on those points just as we begin the second panel. But before I go into the details, I'd like to welcome you all, but very specifically Laure Le Bars, who's the president of QuiC, with whom we're running this event. And is this next one, please? Yeah, and the next one, please. We have the 2 hours really. Oh no, okay, I thought we had the agenda there. We have 2 hours that are going to be very packed with information and views on the role of women in quantum. First of all, from a professional perspective, hearing from really astounding women that have been in the field for a number of years and hearing about their experiences, and then very specifically looking at the investment landscape. What are the things that are holding women back from founding or becoming founding members of teams, or indeed from VC partners and being part of the VC firms that are actually funding and investing in new startups and new quantum technologies. So Laure, I think before we go on to your first panel, you wanted to say a few words. Laure? Laure's actually joining us from Paris. There's an event there, and I think that there might be some connectivity problems. So while Laure, are you still there? No, I think she's going to have to re-engage. Perhaps then if we can go, we have the, Isis, next slide, please. We can come back to Laure in just a second, but I think that we can perhaps move now to Ellen Kashefi. For most of you, Ellen will need no introduction. She is a member of QuiC, but she's also the founder of VeryCloud, which enables quantum computing as a science. She also has many other accolades and attributes. She is somebody who's very well known in the ecosystem. She's the chief scientist for the National Quantum Computing Centre in the UK, and also a professor for quantum computing. Ellen, I think that it's up to you to really set the stage for the discussions that we're going to have over the next couple of hours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation and for the opportunity. Now I'm going to do the thing that I'm the most scared, because I'm a Zoom person, to see how I'm going to share my screen and the team. But just give me 1 second to just first open the talk. Okay, so let's see, with all those nice introduction you gave me, I failed to do this or not. Open system settings.
No worries. While you do that, I can see that Laure's back again. Laure, you've been able to connect again. I think that you're having some connectivity problems on your end.
I was afraid of. Yeah, sorry. Was afraid of
No
this.
worries.
I was scenario. I'd switch to my phone because this is. Very sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I think that you're back on cue. So while Ellen shares her screen or also finds the right button on Teams, I was just introducing you and said that you wanted to say a few words about QuiC, and I think also possibly about QCATs. Laure?
Hello?
Yes, you're not hearing me.
Okay, no, I will do it shorter. So I'm Laure Le Bars. I work for SAP as a research project director, and I'm the president of QuiC. So QuiC is a European industrial association on the different quantum technologies.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
I will, sorry. Okay, I'll leave it to Helen. I'll try to solve my bandwidth issue in the meantime.
My apologies. I think I sent my slide to to you. If you share it, maybe that's going to make it easier, because there is something with the
Perfect.
administrator.
Okay. Isis, can you share the slides, please?
It's going to be one of those annoying talk that I keep saying next. Sorry about that. But let's just move on.
I think this is also a testament to the fact that how successful International Women's Day has become, because all of us are at events doing multiple talks and of course trying to do our real jobs in parallel. So I think that this is a positive thing. I'm seeing it as a positive indicator of how much this subject has become part of you know, the topics that are top of mind for very many organizations. So there you go, Ellen, I think that you can see that now.
Yes, fantastic. Hopefully everybody can see it. Again, thank you so much for this kind invitation. So I want to share you a little bit my story in various multiple hat of science and research and co-founder of Very Cloud. And I start by telling you the mission of the Very Cloud and the title that I'm very excited about, and to see that how we can make quantum computing as a service. So if you can go to the next slide. So I see it's not in the full screen, but you see the point, hopefully. So everything that we're doing these days is about big data machine. Everybody wants to collect more data, correlate more data, communicate more data, and trade more data. So it is all about the data machine that we are doing. And if we go to the next slide, you see that things are getting complicated, because if we next slide, please. If we add what our people are trying to do, adding the large language model on top of this, I don't know if you seeing it in the full screen or not, because I don't see it in the full screen.
Ella, unfortunately, we can't show it in full screen because it's a PDF.
Okay, but maybe if you just make a screen smaller, yeah, it fits into the screen, and they need to be full screen. It's just, yeah, excellent, fantastic, that works. At least you can see all my slides. So yeah, so by adding large language model and blockchain on top of this system, so essentially next slide, you're seeing that my point is that, you know, this fast, massive, secure, accurate data machine that we all need for whatever business that we are thinking, it will essentially consume the energy of the planet. So I don't need to argue for the quantum audience in here that indeed, you know, that's the way that in the next slide we are hoping collectively to use breaking this barrier. And of course, quantum is the answer, because we can create this distributed quantum architecture that, you know, can provide both security as well as fast networking, as well as, you know, capacity for the data processing. And, you know, at least in my view, in my dream, is that we are also doing it for the public good, you know, whether it's the net zero application, health application, fraud detection, etc. We're saying whenever we want to look at it, and that's the privacy preserving, which is the main point of our my story, is the goal that you want. So that's the stage that I want to discuss. So next slide, I just want to also emphasize that, and that's why it is amazing to be part of this ecosystem and this European quantum system, because we all strongly believe it, that it takes the entire ecosystem from science, technology, use case, industry, government, national, etc., to really unlock this quantum utopia that I was presenting, that we can actually make an impact. So as part of this big ecosystem moving between science, technology, use case, that is the part of my story, we founded Very Cloud. Next slide, please, with my wonderful co-founder, Mark Kaplan, CEO, Josh Nunn, the chief scientist, also on the hardware side, and the amazing team that some of them are presenting in here, just to show that how this ecosystem, even within a company, from software, hardware, engineer, classical, and quantum, coming together. I just want to walk a little bit in the next few minutes about exactly what is our contribution towards this secure, fast data machine that I was pitching, that we all want from it. So next slide. Thank you so much for assisting me with this. So the point is that by now everybody agreed, and everybody have heard this sentence, that data and computing are the new commodity that everybody is after. And of course, is the most important thing is that when we have such a commodity, how do we secure them? So next, so the point is, you know, my message is that the quantum communication is the only way that it provides the long-term privacy of our security of our data. You know, when we're thinking about the specificity of the data, whether it's the health data, whether it's the security of the national data, when it's the genetic data, when there is the government data, if we're really thinking about the most, you know, precious data, and we want to have forward security, long-term security, the only solution is quantum communication. Next slide. And of course, in our solution that I was showing you, the Q-line architecture, which is the core of the technology we develop at VeriCloud, this is what we are going to show you, that Q-line is unlocking secure, verifiable, scalable solution for quantum and classical cloud. So essentially, I put all the buzzwords together, and in the next few slides, I want to show you how do we provide security, how do we provide verifiability, what do I mean by scalable solution, and what is this the use case both for quantum cloud that we are emerging in future as also the classical cloud. Okay, so let's go through this. Next slide. So let's go step by step. You know, the first thing, let's look at just the communication as what people say, like data in transit. So right now, everybody has heard this story over and over that our data in transit are not future-proof. Data can be harvested. You know, people are downloading, collect now, attack later. So we really, really need to have a new solution to deal with even the security of data at transit. Next slide. And of course, QKD. It's the solution, you know, is the point-to-point solution for quantum key distribution. We have had known it is the old technology for 30 years, which is allowing us random photon source to be sent from Alice and Bob, and in trying to make sure that it's providing unhackable key that is allowing us, unless you don't attack it, and then regarding the security, everybody question it, but if you don't attack it while we're setting up the system, it's too late later. So this is essentially against this harvest attacking a future proof that is important. But the problem is that it's point to point. When you know, like when you're looking at from the business point of view. So next slide. So what we have been focusing a lot at VeriCloud is to really adding the missing element, which is the network architecture. Next slide, please. So in the network architecture Q-line that we have designed, so instead of just looking at the point-to-point Alice and Bob, we are also adding the Charlie. And the point is now the single photon, and we don't need repeater, we don't need satellite, and we are talking about the metropolitan network, the last mile solution, the 100-kilometer solution, that you really want to take advantage of this quantum data forward security, and yet not waiting for the generation of the technology that are not available. So we're taking a single photon, we masking it through all the way to the end. If I were able to show you my fancier slide in Keynote, you would have seen the animation. But the point is, we don't measure it at the node in order to have the need for repeater, but we keep masking it. And in this solution, that's what I mean by scalability, that within 100, 200 kilometers that it might serve your particular end user demand, we are able to add several of the node and create a network solution to be able to build up higher level of the stack for the application that I want to talk next, please. Okay, so we have this architecture and it's allowing us to build a quantum network. So now we want to move to the classical cloud. Next slide, please. So if you look at the current data, that the message that I started, current data at not anymore just on the transit that can be secure with the quantum communication, but at rest. You know, they are also vulnerable to harvesting. You know, you can store now and break later, but also the biggest challenge for most of our data center is to also ensuring that, you know, against any attack that will be applicable to the various center. And the solution like a post-quantum solution or like even the QKD network solution, they themselves also introducing vulnerability if your data are very, very special set of data that you want 100 years of security. And that's why, in fact, our Q-line architecture that I present you is best suitable for such a scenario, as I will explain in the next slide. And one of our products that we have launched and we are available for the testbed is the quantum safe data storage. This is the example of how we're bringing classical crypto with the quantum crypto together to give you something that is not possible neither with the quantum solution itself nor with just classical solution. So in the classical data center, like consider any data center, any, take OVH if you wish, you have several of these data centers, and we are using the Shamir secret sharing in order to ensure to give you the highest level of security for this classical data. But we know that every few months, every few days, depending on your vulnerability, depending on your attack model, you need to update this encoding. And that updating of encoding is the vulnerability of your end user. And that's exactly where QLine comes to the picture. For updating of your data, we are using QLine architecture. For securing data at rest, we are using the classical secret sharing. So this combination is what we're calling the high cloud product that we have developed to provide a scalable solution with no new data leakage for the classical architecture. So if we go to the next slide, I want to pitch the last story of the part. So I show you that in a sense, in a very quick way, that how we are using our QLine architecture for the classical cloud. But what about the quantum cloud? We also seeing the more and more emerging, whereas the Amazon or various national infrastructure, that now quantum cloud provider also putting in their devices and platform in the various setting. And the problem that we have there is that, again, there is no privacy and no verifiability. How do I know the particular chemical discovery algorithm that I'm doing it is not, protected, or how do I know actually these devices are doing what you're supposed to do? So the current quantum cloud, they have this pain point that is there is no privacy at the algorithm or data and outcome. And again, our QLine architecture is a solution for that. And that was the vision that we have from the day first. Next slide, please. We have developed QLine in the same way that I just showed you how you can connect it to the classical cloud to establish security of the classical data center, but you can also plug it at the end. Instead of you're having the Alice and Bob for the key exchange, but you can put in fact the Bob to be a quantum computer. The same masking technology that I show you very briefly how it helped with the classical security is also ensuring the privacy of the quantum data. So I guess the message that I want to show you is that when we're building as a infrastructure, it's very important that infrastructure, our QLine, addressing several pain points. It's not like every time you need to tell to your customer, let's build everything from scratch. The QLine is able to give you the data security in transit, like a QKD. It's able to enhance the security of the classical cloud, but also is able to exactly plug to a quantum computer and through the same masking mechanism to provide the security of the client which wants to delegate their computation to the server. So this is really the vision that we have. Thank you very much. Next slide. And it's back to what I wanted to say. Next, please. Thanks. So essentially, I told you the story backward in the sense that, I show you the product and that today we are launching at Very Cloud. But the story comes over the decade of that we have been part of this ecosystem, whether with my hat as the university doing the science or exploiting the use cases and now being engaged in a much bigger ecosystem of technologies. Really, very briefly, depending on how much time I have, and maybe we can go more for the question, I just wanted to also show that there is a lot of science that allow and empower even our own startup at a Very Cloud. So very quickly, just next slide to give credit to all my co-author that, we invented this protocol for the privacy, security, access to the quantum cloud that I said is like the ultimate goal for our company as well. It's called Universal Blind Quantum Computing with Anne Bodman and Joe Fitzsimon is almost 2 decades ago. And launching that, which was a pen and paper protocol, all the way to come to a reality that we can now implementing it and showing it as a use case has been dream of any scientist. And I'm grateful that, the ecosystem has grown and we are able to do that. But it's very important to remind ourselves that this is a cycle that allows us to continue, go back to the core of the science and come back again to the exploitation. And hence, in this ecosystem that we are building, this collaboration between academia and industry are very also important. Maybe we can jump a bit further to be on the time. I know I'm almost thinking if you go to the last slide, please. I put, as usual, many slides, but just wanted to really close with the message that we have. And in a sense that we are at this beginning of the quantum explosion, if you wish, and it's very important, those pain points, whether it's the scalability of the end user, whether it's the privacy that we want to provide, whether it's the integrity of the system we're building, they are all addressed together. And for me, I'm excited that what the architecture that we have designed at VeriCloud, the QLine, is addressing all of them by design, rather than being something that we'll set up and postdoc like the AI afterward. We want to address it. We are putting all those things at the core, and I'm excited to see how things evolve and how many QLine we can establish across the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ella. You are our first showcase of a really impressive woman in quantum that has achieved a lot from the scientific but also business perspective. I think that you're addressing one of the holy grails of quantum, which is a scalability angle. A lot of quantum technologies are not scalable. Obviously, it's slightly easier at the algorithm scale than it is perhaps at the hardware side of things. But what are the most pressing scientific problems that you've had to solve to get your company to the stage where you're able to raise funds and able to get to that first rung of commercialization?
It's a fantastic question. It was almost like a journey. When you come, you're addressing all of these things, as you say, as a scientific question. So I think for me, the journey that allows us to understand and listen to the end user. I think this is like any other technology sector, is because there is a gap between what are we building as a set of tools and how we understand our quantum, and we are the quantum expert. But when we go to the end user, they have a view that it might be hyped or might be even very much misled about what can do. So this matchmaking between what the end user wants today and what we can offer. So as I said, we come from this security of a quantum cloud, which is the big dream, and is, of course, this is a demand. But in fact, going through the company journey, we realize there is much more clear question that the end user come, for example, the scalability, how do we can solve the problem instead of being point-to-point key distribution, it will be a network distribution. So to me, the best lesson that assists us towards our fundraising was that listen to the end user and don't pretend that you know it, because sometimes we academic think we know everything, but in fact, understanding what the end user wants and trying to provide an agile system that can be adapted, rather than just selling what we have, trying to actually change what we are offering to what the market is required. So for me, that was the most exciting part of this journey.
Thanks, Ellen. And I'm sure I don't know what you mean. Academics thinking that they have the absolute truth. Never seen that happen before. We have a really interesting question here from, I can't see if it's Fred Curling, but apologies, I can only see part of your name. I assume VeriCloud will offer blind computing services too. I see many business cases for such services, but also legal challenges, especially in connection to privacy regulations. Have you done or seen any work already on how on earth we're going to define and protect such regulations on machines we, by design, cannot check upon what is happening? So it's a view, and it's also a question.
I think
but essentially, yeah.
I love it. Thank you very much for this very, very relevant question. And as I mentioned, alluded, it's like we need to do it. It's that the same thing happened a little bit with AI. We are one level, we are so excited to roll over and trying to offer the technology. But if the regulation comes afterward, it's become the trouble. And the case of the blind QC, precisely as you mentioned, and privacy is, in one hand, you want to have it to make sure that, you protect both the vendor and the software developer. But in the end, exactly as you say, is the issue of the regulation. So the way that we have worked, and is actually why one of the reasons is that most of the scientific work that we are doing is public. So it's allowing us, instead of trying to go towards like a protected IP, we can put the technology forward and trying to clearly talking, and that's why we're talking to various standardization organizations to trying to understand how this thing fits, and in what level of the standard. And the same thing even go with QKD. Even for QKD now, we need to go through the very detailed standardization, but it's the usual competitiveness versus collaboration part. So in short, we are talking with whoever needs to talk in order to understand the regulation. And it will fit within the same infrastructure. The best way to say, like for the data center, I think ideally for us, very cloud, is that we fall within the same certification mechanism that the HPC provider, when they want to provide some level of security for their end user, now we can offer the same thing for the QPU provider. So if we can fit within the same standard, we have win. But it's a long journey go forward, trying to make sure we address this issue.
It is, and just a reminder there to everyone who's on the call, QuIC does have a standardization group, and in fact, we're leading, BluSpecs is leading a CSA looking at standards in quantum and how we can agree those with like-minded countries like obviously the US, Canada, but also South Korea, Japan. So I would absolutely invite everyone on this call who's interested in that aspect of standardization as the bedrock of future competitiveness to join and join the conversation. So thank you so much, Ellen. Unfortunately, we don't have time for many more questions, but if anyone does have questions, please put them in the Q&A and hopefully Ellen can get round to answering them asynchronously. Now, Laure, hopefully your connectivity issues have been resolved and we can hand over to you to this marvelous panel that you have. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, now we have the sound. Sorry for that. That's live. Yeah, so we talk now about those future innovators, see how we can attract women like Ellen, those stars. So you will hear today from those quantum market leaders and how to stimulate the generation and you know, how do we tap into those talent. So I have with me Dr. Mamiko Kuyiraoka, Senior Research Scientist for QKD Toshiba, Mr. Axel Ferrazini, welcome, Managing Partner at GovStrat, and Dr. Elsie Marie Borelli, Head of External Relationship at Algorithmic Q. So I will first ask each of you to introduce yourself, tell a little about you, your current role, and what's your take in this today's topic. Mamiko?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Mamiko Kujiraoka, a quantum cryptography researcher at the Toshiba Corporation in Japan. The trigger for my interest in quantum was a book I read during my university days. My previous impression of quantum mechanics was counterintuitive, difficult, and complicated, and its practical use was unclear for me. But after reading about its application, quantum cryptography, I was greatly shocked. I realized that quantum mechanics has a potential to significantly change the world history of security. That was my turning point. Since then, I've been deeply interested in quantum information application and obtained my PhD through research on quantum information devices. And after working on quantum computers, I am currently focused on quantum cryptography research at Toshiba. And I am also a mother of 2 daughters, so I hope to provide insight from a researcher's perspective and my experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Mamiko. So now, Axel.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the invitation. So my name is Axel Ferrazini. I have multiple hats. One is I have a consulting firm in Brussels where I'm specialized in quantum technologies. Another one is I'm very active in the education in quantum because I'm leading a major at an engineering computer science school in Paris called EPITA, where we have a very broad program in quantum computing and quantum technologies. So that will be more or less where I will provide some expertise. I'm doing quantum activity since 2014 because I'm on the board of ETSI. ETSI, that's European Telecommunication Standards Institute, where we are working very actively on quantum safe cryptography.
Back to the standards. Thank you, Axel. Elsie Marie? We don't hear you.
I'm still muted. Now should be working. Okay. Hi, everyone. So I'm Elsie Borelli. I'm the head of external relations at Algorithmic, which is a startup based in Finland. And we are focusing on developing the, let's say, full stack of software, specifically for applications in drug discovery, let's say around near-term quantum computers specifically. My background, I did my PhD in the field of open quantum systems, so studying how noise affects quantum systems, which is quite relevant for quantum technologies. Back in those days when I was doing my PhD, let's say quantum technologies were much, let's say, in their infancy compared to where they are now. There weren't really companies pursuing actively building quantum computers yet, but it was more like on the level of a dream. But yeah, I was working more on the fundamental understanding of quantum physics. Then I did a few postdocs afterwards, but then after, let's say, spending some years in the academic world, I wanted to explore outside and go more work for the industry. After which I actually, for many years, switched my field and I was doing research in many different areas around robotics and so on. And after somehow the field of quantum technologies matured, I kind of jumped into more of a business world and in quantum technologies, but that a bit more in my background, but still very much involved also with the, let's say, with the scientific part that we do in our company, and it still excites me very much what we do here scientifically.
Thank you, Elsie Marie. So you see there is a diverse type of background and experience, different type of organization. I would like to, so we know that several studies point out that diversity, and diversity in general and gender diversity in particular in teams, in companies, brings better outcome, including financial outcome, by the way, and results. So from your experience and from your point of view, how will you attract those new talents, especially in this field where it's relatively new and unknown? Do you take any specific measure in your organization? So maybe we'll start with you, Axel, with what is your experience with the students? So let's start with the source.
Yes, thank you. That's very interesting because when in 2022, I've started this major, we looked at the existing education system, and we have seen that a lot of students were doing PhDs in quantum, and with this broad diversity of technologies relying on quantum physics, there were a lot of men and not enough female. So the initiative started saying we need to have engineers, we need to have developers doing quantum, computing and development. And then within this engineering school, we have around 25% of female students. So we said, 25% out of 500 students every year, we have some potential. And for the first batch, so we started with 15 students in 2023, and we had 0 women wanting to do the program. So I said, maybe, I've done a wrong promotion. Maybe there was something not appropriate in the way I presented the program. And I realized that the women wanted all to do AI, health, and cybersecurity. So that's, the topic was not attracting enough. And then I realized when we started a new batch this year, we had the same issue. No woman wanted to do quantum. So now we need to change the narrative. Maybe we need to adapt. Because when you look at the PhD students from other universities, you have at least a few, not many, not even 20%. That's more like 5%. So that's my goal for this year, to change entirely the way I'm addressing quantum technologies to attract more women, because I believe in the diversity and bringing the different point of view. So the goal is to say, in quantum, you can do healthcare, cybersecurity, and you can do whatever you want to do in AI using quantum technologies. So we just need to trigger this, and it means that we need to have role models. We need to have women from quantum coming and talking. Then they will be attracted, I believe.
Thank you, Axel. And Mamiko, you explained a little how you came to this, how you discovered it. But can you explain a little more about? Axel mentioned role model. Did it play a part in your career?
Yes, in Japan, the share of women in scientific field is quite low. I think that parents play a significant role. My mother loves science, and during my childhood, she often took me science museum or natural history museum. But this might not be common for every Japanese girl. In Japan, there is a strong perception that certain professions are more suitable for either men or women. So, for example, I often hear terms like female researchers, female doctors, or female politicians, or male nurses. However, I rarely hear terms like male researchers, male doctors, or female nurses. And additionally, due to lack of role models, these old stereotypes are still inherited from parents to children. So one possible solution is showcasing successful people of various attributes, regardless of gender. Yes, and fortunately, Toshiba encourages me to give a talk to students in universities. So sometimes I receive opportunities to give talks about the research results and my career at the university. So I hope this would be a help to that more people from a diverse background can join this challenging field in the near future.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And now, Elsie Marie, you are the good example of our, how to attract, starting with you CEO being a woman. So can you develop on this and explain what do you do specifically, or how is it by algorithmic?
Yeah, so let's say we, as a quantum company, I think we have much higher percentage of women compared to perhaps other companies in this area. So I checked actually the numbers now. So in R&D, we're around, let's say we're 25% women in R&D, and overall in the organization, about third women, which is quite high for let's say, for quantum. I think, of course, one reason probably is that our CEO is woman, and we have, let's say, women in higher leadership positions, which I think already is a reason. It's one source of attracting, let's say, the women who are graduating from STEM to come work for us. And perhaps another factor is that it's an application focused company. So I don't know, one reason that I for example, one thing that I often see is that women might be a bit more impact focused in when they are looking for opportunities where they want to work or where they want to study, and they want to see the impact of what they do. Maybe, let's say, to be more focused on that rather than just developing their own skills or making a smaller thing happen and making that excellent. And I think for this, let's say, maybe promoting also your company in a way that shows the impact of what you're doing helps in attracting women, besides just having more women simply in the leadership.
Yeah, I think you touch a good point. And I was at the Senate yesterday in France, and there was this, there are figures that shows that when you have interdisciplinarity, so it was in university and engineer courses, that attracts more women. If you have a courses that is entitled architect and engineer, it's more concrete, and you really see things of biology and informatics and climate and mathematics, etc. So I think it applies to this domain as well. And yeah, the figures shows that in those cases, instead of this 20 or less %, we reach the 40 or over 40%, which is the society. So I think Axel and Elsie, you're a perfect example where how it's how does it apply to quantum technologies here. I don't know if you have other example, Axel, of domain that could, I mean, or a way of explaining what do we do exactly in quantum technologies, and that may attract women as well.
So we took 2 initiatives lately. First, we intend to try to recruit at that earlier age when they are 18. And the way to do it is like next week, we're organizing a Twitch event only dedicated to students that are 17 or 18 to explain quantum technologies. And then maybe to attract them to start STEM studies with the aim to do quantum major at the end, or specialization. So that's good to educate earlier. Then what we are also trying to do is when they are 20 years old, so it means they are in the first year of engineering school, I'm inviting more women to come and to talk to this, big group of students. So we have the chance to have people from Airbus, from BMW, from also other companies like WeLink. Those startups in Europe have women, and they accepted to come and to talk to the students. So I hope, by bringing this diversity, experience, and willingness just to, because you need to find the time. I mean, if I ask somebody to come and talk for 1 hour, they have really their job to do. And I fully understand that might not be available, okay? But, I'm very patient, and I can set up team calls. They can come directly to our school. We can organize events with the Lab Quantique in France, for example. Everything's possible. And I'm ready to do the extra mile to make sure that we will succeed in getting more women involved.
Yeah, and I think this visibility is important. Speaking at conference events, as you mentioned, I think internally is important as well. I mean, making sure the company highlights the contribution of those women, and not just, really making sure they are on the stage at some point. And Elsie, you mentioned when we prepared this call, the importance of networking. Can you elaborate on this point?
Yeah. So overall, of course, here, let's say in hiring, of course, it helps if there is a wide network of women who are working in quantum, and they, let's say, to have overall a network of women who then can attract more female students and help find, let's say, good career paths for the women as well. We found at least that this is very helpful. The stronger the networks are, and this also, besides just let's say helping find good candidates, it also helps somehow to bring job security, which I think for many women especially, they tend to be very aware of job security, maybe because of, I don't know, they think more, I don't know, for the supporting the family for long term. How do they do when they have family? I don't know, maternity leaves and so on. So you want to maybe have not, let's say, short contracts and so on, and they maybe pay attention more to job security, especially, let's say, at early stages. And of course, the more, I don't know, I tend to always say that I think job security doesn't exist in any job per se, but job security exists in being well networked and having good connections around. That's what actually brings you in the long-term security in having a career that is long-lasting. So I think, let's say, overall, the importance of networking also among women is extremely important.
And that brings the visibility as well. And that's your experience as a startup. Now let's go back to a big company, Amico, and a different country, a different society. What is important for you? I mean, how will you define a supportive environment where you will be attracted to?
Yes, I have taken maternity leave twice. In both cases, I realized that it was a challenge to catch up with my colleagues after long absence. However, recently, the rate of paternity leave has been increasing. In our research laboratory, the percentage is now over 50%. So I believe that the more the rate of paternity leave, the less gap caused by maternity leave. And recently, many supporting activities, many support proposed by Japanese, my company, of course, my company, and also governments.
Yeah, I think it's important that, I mean, I mentioned supportive environment, equal treatment, equal pay, promotion. So even if it's in the law, we need to make sure it's applied specifically. I don't know, Elsie, if you wanted to add something on this topic, or?
Yeah, of course. Like, I think still today, like I personally, I'm a mother as well. And for me, I can say what's been extremely important is to have a partner who is ready to, let's say, equally share, let's say, let's say, how to divide, let's say, taking care of a child and work and so on. And this is extremely important in order to be able to pursue your career further and not to have a huge, let's say, long stop from your work life, which would have a great impact, of course, on the career. And of course, I would say at the company level, I see, at least personally, more paternity leaves nowadays, especially maybe, okay, Finland is promoting this strongly, also other Nordic countries, and we have employees in other Nordic countries as well. And I do see more men taking paternity leave. And so far in our company, we haven't yet had any maternity leaves, but I'm sure that they will come as well. But I hope that they're approximately equal in maternity and paternity leaves. And you know, of course, it's the responsibility of the company to accommodate in a way that it doesn't disrupt.
Yeah, that's, I think it's important that this is, sorry. Yeah, this is a society, as we said, this is not women's problem. This is a society problem. This is men's and women's problem here. So maybe I would like to do a round, just if you would like to add a few words before we conclude. Let's start with Axel. Is there anything you wanted to add? Any point that we were missing?
You know, what I'm trying to test is I have the chance to have a daughter. She's 8 years old only, but she's very curious. And I have to say that in the quantum ecosystem, you have to be very curious. And I strongly believe that initially when I was trying to pitch about the quantum major, it was really technical, really architecture oriented and quantum computer creation. And now that I'm switching to creation of new drugs, creation of trying to explore the healthcare through quantum, it worked a lot because you can foresee some, invention. You can believe that it will make a very big impact on the society. And that's where some women, actually some students, came to me and said, now I understand what you are talking about. Now I understand that there is something that can be achieved in the next few years. And not talking anymore about, yes, we will create the quantum computer in the next 20 years. It changed entirely their perception. And I believe that it helped just to have a bigger impact. So my hope is next year I will come back and say, now among the 20 students that I got, I have at least 5 women.
Yeah, good target. Mamiko?
Yes, I think I would like to keep the talk about how quantum mechanics is so attractive and how, yes, and I think the quantum science is an interdisciplinary field. So around me, there are many specialists in various fields, such as electronics, mechanical engineering, physics, security, and IT network, many kinds of fields. So I think everyone interested in quantum has a chance of success. So yes, what I want to say. Thank you.
Good. And Elsie Marie, final remark.
Yeah, I think I could somehow continue on what already was said, but basically on encouraging both women and men to go with their curiosity, and to, if we are able to, as a community, show that just being curious in quantum physics can in the end lead you to many different places when it comes to job, career, and so on. That it's not a one way that you take when you choose to do quantum physics, let's say, or choose to study quantum technologies, and to demonstrate this clearly and to see everywhere it can take you. I think this can help us in also attracting more women.
Yeah, and I think this is important, and that's also a question of maybe generation, how to make impact, having something with sense. It's not specific to women, I would say, and we need to attract those new talents. We need to develop those. I will conclude with, of course, I mean, we do this event on March the 8th. I mean, I have more and more events the full week. I'm solicited in every corner. But I think we should do more than this, and similar event throughout the year. So maybe I will. We have to think of what could be the role of QuIC in this, as an association of different industry, of different, of also RTOs and academics from all over Europe. How can we help on those? Promoting the role of the woman in quantum, promoting those role models, networking, visibility, etc. So it's an open wish, I would say. I mean, with Tanya, we have a role to play here. And now I switch it to you, Tanya.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Elsie, Mamiko, Axel, and Kaleda. It's an amazing panel, really, really interesting. And also, I think that we've heard some things that are perhaps new. It's recognition that this is something that we all have to deal with. It's an ecosystem play. And Axel, from your perspective, it's also, you have to go the extra mile. It's not something that women who will be naturally interested in quantum are not going to fall into your lap, if I can use that phrase. You have to go the extra mile. You have to go to where the women are, and you have to demonstrate actively that this is a welcoming ecosystem, because unfortunately for many women in their careers, they will have experienced the exact opposite, that anything technical is a male preserve, and a particular type of male preserve that is not able to understand that women have something to contribute, and there'll be lots of obstacles there. More on that later. We do have some questions in the chat. So, for example, there's one here. Well, it's not so much a. Oh yes, Axel, you've answered that already. So, does your school have internships? Do you want to have, perhaps that could be a call to action to anyone here? Do you have internships? How do you engage with companies? And what role can they play in welcoming women into their quantum teams?
Yes, so out of the 15 students, I still have 2 looking for internships outside France, because in France you need to validate your engineering degree by having experience outside the country. So if you have internships that you would like to propose, please send me an email. That's easy to find my email address. That's axel@govstrat.eu. I have to say that I have seen the teams welcoming the interns that already started. That's amazing. I mean, they didn't realize that that's so concrete. So yes, please send them in. And if you would like to be part of the program, you can also send me an email. We can find out so many things to do. And I've already noted that I will need to invite Elsie Marie to give a talk and to interact with the students.
Perfect, thank you. And anyone who wants to reach out to you, Axel, with your permission, they can reach out to us, and then we can provide that connection. I think we've got a fairly curated webinar anyway, so we don't have hopefully any bad actors in this webinar and in the ecosystem, in our ecosystem anyway. There's a comment more than a question about supporting new mothers in quantum or otherwise. A comment from Daniela Salvoni saying that it was hard for her after maternity leave to go back to the lab and conferences and breastfeed, which is now recommended up to 2 years. It would be great if in companies, universities, conferences, some small rooms for breastfeeding or milk extraction would be arranged. Also, a paper wall with a comfortable chair would be enough. Completely agree with you. And Daniela, I think that there's something that's beyond breastfeeding. I don't know whether you know, the women that are in this webinar, when you go to a panel and they give you those high chairs and you're wearing a skirt and you have to spend more time wondering whether you're sitting correctly than you are actually on answering the questions, right? So lots of things that we shouldn't be gender blind about, lots of things where we really should be gender and more generally diversity blind, but there are certain things that actually you do have to be consciously thinking about, you know, modifications. How can you make things more comfortable for people? Again, you know, on the high stool, it's something that it's happened to me lots of times. I think we've got.
Could I comment on this?
Yeah.
I wanted to
yes, please do, Elsie.
Because I think this is a very important point, and I think, let's say, for employers and companies to really think of flexibility when it comes to different life situations. For example, when you start a family and so on, it's extremely important. And I see this all the time. Like, we give the opportunity to work fully remotely globally, which of course gives people a lot of flexibility, especially with young children, small babies and so on. It makes it very easy to combine, let's say, work and family life. But besides this, for example, I don't know, when we have company events with travel, that you allow family to come along, these kind of things. You allow people to come with children, combine in a flexible way work and your family life, bring your spouses along and so on. This helps people a lot in kind of, you know, not having the extremely strong separation. It helps people to combine the two. And I think this is very important, and companies should think more how to make it easier for people to combine the two.
I completely agree, Elsie. And in fact, last year in London Tech Week, I was on a few panels, and in one of them, one of the co-panelists had brought her 11-year-old with her. And he was absolutely center stage in all the photographs. So making this visible as well, you know, it's okay. Yeah. You know, if you, not everyone does have the luxury of great health or childcare or even elder care, because we're talking about children a lot, but there are, you know, I think we're probably one of the generations where we have to also look upwards as well as downwards age range. Mamika, I'm sure you know, in Japan, this is also something that is a real kind of like social issue. So those responsibilities need to also hopefully be shared amongst men and women. But regardless of whether you're a man or a woman, your company, the organization, the conference you're attending, you know, you probably do things to make this easier for everyone. So Laure, I've taken over a little bit there on the last end of your panel, but as ever, expertly moderated and prepared. I'm sure that everyone on this webinar realizes that there's a lot of work that goes into not just inviting people, getting the right mix, but also making sure that the exchange is a fruitful one and can really unearth different perspectives and different things that we can all go away and hopefully reflect on, but also take action about. So Laure, thank you. Elsie, Axel, Mamiko and Nicoletta, thank you so much, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you. Isis, I think if you could just share the next slide, please, so I can welcome. Brilliant, thank you. Fantastic. So I have the pleasure now of moderating our next panel. For those of you who are QuIC members, you know 66%, quick mental math there. In fact, no, 75% of the panel already. You will have met Marta Garcia, CFO of Multiverse Computing, hopefully, and if not, you certainly have met QuIC Lizazo on a number of occasions. Flavia Damarquio, again, a classic in QuIC, from the head of innovation deployment of the Constructor Group, has been there and very active since the beginning. And you may or may not know Sami Mugrabi. So Sami is, again, a classic within the quantum ecosystem as an investor. He's just come back from an event in Dubai, a quantum event in Dubai. So Sami, really interested to hear about whether, you know, the issue of women in quantum or access to talent generally also is something that's being considered in other global regions. Sami is the managing partner in Atmos Ventures and has active investments in several quantum companies. You know, for example, Orca. I think Orca is one of yours, isn't it? Orca Computing, Sami. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So just to perhaps before I go into EC's week, I can come back to the presentations just before I start, but just to frame the conversation. Thank you. So yeah, I think that Laure also referred to this in her panel. Having diverse teams is a no-brainer, right? So there's a study by Harvard that has actually identified that VC firms that have more than 10% more than the average female partners have basically a 9.7% differential, positive differential in the profitability of their funds on exit. Teams that have diverse founders, so teams that have women in their founding teams, they actually generate 2x, so 2 times more the amount that per dollar invested than teams that don't have women in their founding teams. Sorry about the teams, but you get the point. And finally, we would have an extra 5.5 million, there's an M missing there, more EU founders if women founded at the same rate as their male counterparts. Next one, please. Despite this, 9% of all European assets under management are managed by by women VC general partners. 90% of all startup funding goes to all male teams, and around 18% of the IC Accelerator partners, only 18% have a female founder. I'm just going to do a deep dive in some of those. So these figures are actually from Ismea from the European Commission. I'll tell you a little bit more about some work that we're doing with them on that just as we finish the webinar. But you can see it's fairly consistent over time. The rate of success has sometimes been greater for female founders, for women founders. So for example, in May 2022, for example, we saw that there are only 19% of applications, but 34% of those applications were successful. So that's obviously something to look at, to do a deep dive in the data there. Next one, please, Isis. And I also think that this slide is really interesting. So if we look at the areas in which women have put applications forward, or at least teams that have at least one woman co-founder have put in applications to the XC Accelerator, we see that there are some areas, so for example, space and consumer products and services, we don't have any women in those categories. The category in which there are most applications, I think this mirrors some of the conversations that we're having in the previous panel, for example, by Axel. He also referred to health. That's borne out here as well. Next one, please, Isis. So just a few figures on where does the problem start. Only 16.2% of patents or teams presenting patents according to the World International Patent Organization were or had women as co-presenters. Here, I think it's quite interesting, and I'd like to ask the panelists, in particular Flavia, about this, because Elm maybe gave some indication about why this could be the case. So she was saying that actually, no, we want the science to be available to everyone. So I'll come back to that particular point. And then a final point that comes from our own survey of women in quantum, which is that 49% of respondents said that they felt they had to prove their credibility more than their male counterparts. So I think that's the last one I had on that. Brilliant, thank you. So coming back to my panelists, I think just maybe just an overall question to all of you. What do you think of those figures? Is there anything that specifically stands out? Does it confirm what you know of the ecosystem? Are there some that are surprising you? And I think, Marta, if I ask you first, and then Sami, and then Flavia, please.
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, I wasn't aware of some of those figures, so they're quite, striking. Maybe the last one, there was a 49% of, percentage of women that had to prove the credibility for fundraising. I don't know. I mean, we just closed our Series A at Multiverse. We have been fundraising for a few months. I don't have that feeling. It's true that I don't know what to compare to, but I mean, there's other things, other challenges that we had to, be able to comply with, but maybe challenges with regards to the market situation and the type of technology that we are fundraising for, which not all the VCs have maybe the ability to validate. But maybe from my point of view, I haven't felt that I had a particular challenge in that regard. That's my point of view.
Okay, Sami?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those numbers resonate, specifically as well, kind of the number of patents. Then you kind of look at, you kind of reverse and you look at kind of like the foundational reasons why that's the case. Less women kind of getting involved in STEM and in academia is one thing, but, I have heard stories of women in academia who had to kind of go the extra mile and have had to further try to prove themselves because of a very kind of strongly male-dominated type industry with not that many women. I think it also varies geographically. So, for example, if I look at a country like Poland, there are quite a pretty significant number of women in the STEMs field as well. So compared to other countries. Just my recent kind of trip to the Middle East, I would say a woman in STEM academia is really coveted because there's not that many as well. So one would expect different dynamics there. So it's interesting, and I think there's a real interesting geographical kind of understanding that needs to be done there, because that's quite fragmented from an understanding perspective as well.
Absolutely, and I think the root causes for that that would be really worth a deep dive, and maybe that's something for us to take away. Just on your point before I ask Flavia also to comment, the report also said that women inventors were often concentrated in specific industries, so biotechnology, food chemistry, pharmaceuticals, while fields like mechanical engineering have fewer women inventors. I think that's possibly something that we can also see, not just within QuIC, but within the broader technology ecosystem. Certainly at BluSpecs, we see this, and within our Accelerate IoT tribe, we also see that mirrored in the number of women founders or women who are part of founding teams coming through. I think that the last thing, and this is to your point on academia, Flavia will have something to say about this because we already touched on this when we were preparing this panel. But the report also found that women inventors are more commonly found in academia than in the private sector. Again, something to unpick there. Hold that thought, Sami, because I want to come back to you on that. And also Marta. Right, so let's get back into the meat of this panel, which is about the investment side of things and raising investment. Marta, congratulations firstly. You're on the 25 million oversubscribed round for Multiverse. I'm sure it's just going to be the first of many, because there's a lot of work to do, and you're going to need an awful lot of cash to be able to fulfill your ambitions of global domination. So given that that's really, really fresh in your mind, can you tell us about your experience in raising funds? You know, did you have to adjust any behaviors? What was the perception that you got of the people you were pitching to? Were the investors diverse? I know I've asked you a whole load of questions in one, but just share what that experience was. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. We're super excited. It's been obviously a hard process, but no, we're super excited. Yeah, I mean, the fundraising process, some challenges. I think what I mentioned earlier, is such a new technology to the market that, and obviously my background is in corporate finance. I'm not a technical person, so maybe personally my challenges were to try and explain the technology to a group of investors that, you know, had to understand what we were doing. But luckily, most of the investors that you speak to, or at least on the first call, doesn't have to be very technical. So that was good. We didn't have to adjust much. Maybe with regards to geography, we have mostly spoken to European investors and maybe a few on the United States. I don't think we have found any differences on the dialogue with the investors depending on the region. I mean, I don't have any other exposure to other markets, but in that regard, we didn't find any differences. And then maybe one of the things that I've not thinking back on all those calls that we had, only a couple of investors, maybe three the most, and we have spoken to quite a lot. Have asked whether we had any women on the funding team, just to make the point there. But just only 2 or 3 investors, and I remember 2 being from the USA. Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah,
very good. What about just to follow up on that? What about the investment committees, the investors that you were pitching to? Did you pitch to many women VCs? Or were they mostly all males?
I would say, yeah, I would say mostly men, actually. Yeah, mostly men. Yeah, in general, I would say 75% men, 25% women, probably, in all the VCs that we have.
Okay, so that's slightly higher actually than the figures from the reports we've quoted would just suggest, at least in this field of quantum or deep tech. Sammy, QU, I think, because there is evidence that, and I've heard VCs say this all the time, you know, they say it in a way that I'm not quite sure they hear themselves saying it, but they say, oh yeah, no, I could see myself in that. I completely understand and completely relate to the pitch, which is something that's normal. We all have confirmation bias, but there is evidence that beyond this anecdotal evidence or experience, that investment committees invest in first of all things that obviously that they understand, but also that their investments are in companies that reflect their own characteristics. Has that been is that something that you see in the field?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, look, it's tough. Look, as a deep tech investor, for me specifically, that I can speak from my experience, you know, I'm always looking at the tech first, right? So it's one of those things that's you know, that's really important. But if we also just take a step back, I mean, you look at the VC industry in general. Well, you know, I know a few of my female peers have actually also left the industry because they're kind of frustrated and they've had their own stuff to deal with as it relates to kind of the negative issues that they've faced, and they're just like, you know what, we just want to get out of this. So I actually know about, you know, 3 women who have left senior VC positions as a result. So, you know, it's across the different aspects of kind of like the investment supply chain where you're seeing these types of issues. So yeah, I think there is some truth to what you're saying, but I also think it's a little bit more multi-dimensional, and there are a lot of other different variables, I think, as a result to that. But one other thing I'd also like to just keep in mind, and that I'd also like to say, is that you look at some of the historical investments in deep tech with kind of women-founded companies, and I look at the US, for example. You know, we look at companies like Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes, and you know, those have left a real sour taste in investors, as in general, only because there was this kind of like mass media thing as, oh look, first female entrepreneur who was $1 billion, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of kind of VCs who, run by men who are actually signal based were just like, oh my God, here's a chance for us to invest in a, rocket ship of a company. And guess what? It's run by a woman. And so this would really be great for us as a firm to be a part of this story, et cetera. And then when it turned out to, to be fraud, they all kind of recoiled, and a lot of male egos were damaged, and they're like, okay, so now the other female run companies, we're not going to get blindsided by this whole female run type company founder and buy into that fairy tale. We're going to actually be even more diligent as a result because we got screwed over before, and that's kind of become unfair for a lot of female founders, and I see that dynamic happening quite a bit, to be honest.
Okay, so but essentially what you're saying there, that the motivations, whether they were for positive reasons or negative ones, are absolutely wrong. As in, to come back to your point, the decision always has to be made on the tech. And also for Elizabeth Holmes, unfortunately, she was a very bad. I want to say not exactly a role model, but I think that possibly there is one Elizabeth Holmes and probably 200 male equivalents of Elizabeth Holmes.
Yeah. And
yet we're still talking about Elizabeth Holmes. We should be talking, for example, about Özlem Türeci, who founded BioNTech. As soon as we say Elizabeth Holmes, we should also say there are so many female founders that are not like that, and I think that's something that is. But I understand that your point is that the VCs went into Theranos for the wrong reasons, and they drew the wrong conclusions also from what happened. That I think is the message that you're getting across.
As a result, for going into those wrong reasons, it's kind of tainted that whole picture in general. So they're just kind of, at the end of the day, VCs also have to report back to their LPs and tell them why they made those decisions. And now they've just become even more like, okay, you know what? Let's put a kind of break on this. And actually, we made mistakes in the past because of various types of oversights, because we got excited about a certain topic. But now, like, we're gonna, make sure we don't have those blinders on and kind of diligence them even more so than usual. And that's, I think, unfortunate. I mean, you have, and this is a marketing thing too, so like with Elizabeth Holmes, you have like, a whole, what is it? Disney did a whole, or whatever, Amazon, I forget who, did a whole series on that. So it's given it way more, coverage. And that's actually, I think, a bit of an issue. On that note, I just would like to make one last point on that. And specifically, if you look at Elizabeth Holmes' advisory board, it was all really strong, powerful men. And there were a couple of female scientists that she had approached who, after that she told them about it, for example, like that professor at Stanford, she was like, this is BS. I don't buy it. Like, what the hell? And it's actually the women that diligence the technology the right way. And we're like, whoa, this is wrong. We're distancing ourselves from this. Where one would expect that to be the opposite, right? Kind of support. But it was like, no, this technology is bad. So yeah, the whole advisory board was male. She was constantly being referred to as the female Steve Jobs.
Let's come back to the positives. I think that we do need to really kind of like raise the profile. And again, this is something that was outlined in the previous panel. We need to give women founders a platform so that they can really attract investors that maybe would not necessarily see them other than in a one-to-one pitch, to really kind of like see how they can hold the room, how they can relate, how they can communicate. But also so they serve as role models for other would-be aspiring entrepreneurs, because that's, and again, Sammy, this comes to the point that I was trying to make earlier, that diverse teams invest in diverse companies as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but I agree with the sense that yes, we need to give women more of a platform, but I also think you need to change the system from the inside, right? So not about kind of like you know, and these numbers that you give out, that yes, diverse teams generate, you know, better returns and performance. Those numbers are really important in order to kind of, you know, plug into this antiquated system and change that from within. So they're not just like, oh, it's a woman. It's more like, no, because there are diverse teams, it's better for the bottom line, right? And it's a business case as opposed to a charity
and a
case.
social one, and
Right?
an equity one. I think that, you know, that but it has to be, and it cannot just be. And I think that this is something that we're seeing globally with a rollback of DEI schemes, because unfortunately some of them have done more harm than good. And this happens a lot when a pendulum swings for the wrong reasons to one side, and then, you know, there's a backlash. Again, you know, this being a case in point. So let's have a look at, I think I was going to ask you about differences that you've seen where you invest, because you invest across Europe. Marta also mentioned the fact that there are, she didn't particularly see any regional differences when she spoke to investors based on where they were. They were headquartered, so that's quite interesting. But maybe some of the data points would tell another story. So I think it's something that we need to keep an eye on. Marta, what about you, from your experience of coming in? Also, you've come into the quantum sector from finance, which is very different. You've I think that there's a given that these situations, and I think again this was Elsie in the first panel, family dynamics matter. Also, you know, as a woman, if you're, you know, we know these biases exist. If you know you're particularly outspoken, it's sometimes it's not seen. You know, if it's a woman, it's being bossy. If it's a man, it's being assertive. So, but beyond all of those things that are outside, I think the scope of what we want to discuss in this panel. What do you think that we can do, and what are the changes that you would like to see in the investment kind of ecosystem and the investment process to have that more level playing field? I don't want to use the word equitable, because again, that's a very loaded word, but I want a level playing field. I want to compete in the same conditions as male colleagues, and I want everyone to be able to do that, regardless of whether they're women or they're, you know, another underrepresented group.
Yeah, no, so good questions. Maybe I mean, let me just very quickly, I was just going through the chat as well, and I saw a comment that I totally agree with as well. And it's not it's just the quality regardless of who is presenting. I mean, taking this back to fundraising, right? I've never felt any different, or that I have to make an extra effort. It was more the kind of the question was more, what is your background, you know, and more than who is presenting, right? So is it more tech? Is it more finance? Is it more business? So in that regard, I mean, there is no different for me. Maybe more visibility on, like Flavia was saying, good success stories, even like now, you know, on our fundraising, you know, how we've gone through all the process, the market. Maybe this is something that, you know, more publicity in good success stories, maybe led by women, that could actually be very helpful, I guess.
Okay, that's I'll come back to that one, because that's I think, Flavia, you have sometimes different views of that, because you said to me, it's like, I normally don't go to things where I'm just invited to talk about women because I don't want to be labeled. Quite frankly, I also have the same thing. It's just like, don't label me, I'll decide what I want to do on the basis of merit. But also we're saying, actually, it may not be something that we want to do, but if we do stand up and we say, you know, we are women doing this, it's not for us, it's for everyone else coming down the line that sees that representativeness. So I think that's a really interesting point. But I have some more questions, but I just wanted to raise some of them here. And just to say, Sandra, thank you for your questions, but we're not QuIC, so we can't answer your questions there. I'm a governing board member and the leader of the working group on ecosystems, but colleague Mela has already said that she'll look that up. But then coming to the next one, Chiara from Redstone, 100% with Sammy on everything. To add my data point, as a VC investor in quantum specifically, there is a surprisingly high number of women focusing on quantum investment, at least in Europe. Certainly feels I have more women peers in this profession than back in academia while I was doing my PhD in quantum computing hardware. 2 women out of a 30+ group. I think, Flavia, this mirrors what you were saying and also some of the figures that we were sharing earlier. And totally agree with Flavia, substance, tech and quality is what we're looking for regardless of what we're presenting. So I think that's there's a lot of I think we're echoing commonly held views. I'd also really be interested in anyone in the webinar that has a divergent view, because there's clearly something that people do not agree with, otherwise we wouldn't have such poor figures. But then you could also think, well, if they don't agree, that they wouldn't be in this webinar anyway, because yeah, there'd be confirmation bias there. Sammy, now one of the things that we discussed in the preparation for this panel, post-investment, right? It's not just about getting investment into companies that have women in the team. It's also about what happens afterwards. Do you want to just unpick that for us?
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to just, the system is broken, right? And this goes back to, and it's broken, but it's massive and rigid. And female founders are going to have to, in the short run at least, navigate those issues, whether it's with, boardroom dynamics and their board members and how they have to deal with that to further subsequent funding rounds, with investors that are potentially also have confirmation bias or whatever, and even just kind of partner dynamics and day-to-day running of the business where there could be some issues that come up. I think from my perspective, post-investment, it's important because it's not just about raising money in the very beginning. It's about, okay, there are probably going to be some problems that arise in the future and some uncomfortable situations. The question is, do the other male investors, male members that you've partnered with, are they cognizant of that, and can they be kind of your champion as well? It doesn't have to just be like, depending on another woman investor. It could also be like men also understanding what those shortcomings are, and not just kind of being there for support. But at the end of the day, from my perspective, it's really important that my founders are in the best case possible in order to grow a company. So it's up to me to kind of be there for them and understand what those dynamics are and provide support and kind of pushback when needed in order to cater to that. And I think it's kind of an ongoing process over the whole life of the company. That's something to always keep in mind too.
Okay, and in your experience then, have those board members, male board members that have those attitudes, are they open to being kind of coached or perhaps, I would not corrected, but are they aware of their behaviors? And if they are aware, or you make them aware, are they then able to kind of think, oh, right, didn't realize that, I can maybe suggest some ways in which I can counter that impression or readjust so that doesn't happen?
Some are and some aren't. It's very kind of subjective. But at the end of the day, it's also really important to kind of diligence the people that you put on your board from the very beginning, so you don't have to deal with some of these tough things in the future. you know, and also being open and having those types of conversations from the very beginning, as opposed to potentially being desperate to do whatever it takes just to raise the money, and for obvious reasons, right? The company's failing and you need to have some type of capital injection ASAP. So let's not even talk about that stuff. So there's a lot of different variables that come into play. So yeah, I mean, like I said, it's subjective, and again, it's always most important to really diligence the people that you really kind of marry when you bring them on board.
Marta, what's your experience with boards? Are you seeing, the multiverse board as being, diverse? Is that diversity coming through in that richness of suggestions when I mean, hopefully, I don't think you've had any difficult moments yet, but when the chips are down, this is when it really, really matters, right? And I think this is something that both Flavia and Sami are saying, that you need people that you're going to be married to. As in, you don't want somebody to run out the door, as soon as you have a difficulty because you're not scaling as fast, or because a competitor's come onto the market, or even because, again, I forget who it was in the first panel, because regulations change, and that means that what you deliver has an added layer of compliance and cost that wasn't there to begin with. So, yeah. Going back to my question, how's your board? Is it diverse? Are you seeing that diversity reflected in the support they give you?
Yeah, I mean, because of the new funding round, the board has shifted a little bit, and I'm also very excited because previous board was maybe very male oriented, whereas now we have 2 members are female, and they're gonna bring a nice mix, I guess. Well, I know. So that's very exciting as well. But yeah, I mean, in general, let me just mention that at Multiverse, this is not on the board side, but on the company side, we are between 25 and 30% of women, which, in these technologies is quite an achievement. And this is something that we take very seriously. We're working very hard on. And just a little example is the board composition, which we are super excited about.
Brilliant, thank you. Great news. Right, my final question, and please, anyone on the webinar, if you want to ask our panelists anything, please do put your question in the Q&A section. My final question is around gender washing. Right, so it's being used to describe superficial efforts, essentially, to get or to appear to be gender inclusive without making any substantive changes. I mean, this is something that we've seen, obviously, in climate change and across very many spheres. How can investors and companies make sure that the efforts that they are putting into gender diversity and other forms of diversity are genuine, and that merit remains the primary metric for evaluation? But they have to do this, but they also have to address the barriers, the systemic barriers that women are facing in the tech and in the innovation sector. So how can investors and companies balance those two things, those quite conflicting, actually, sometimes, needs? Sami.
Oof, that's a tough question. I don't know. It's hard because I have come across situations where that happens extensively. Oh, let's just hire this person because it makes our numbers look good, or let's just hire this female because because we're trying to get public money and it's a checkbox that needs to be checked. I've seen that with women. I've seen that with people of color. I've seen that in the Middle East as it relates to, for example, like, in the UAE, there needs to be some type of emiratization that takes place. And, the thing is, it has to be top down, right? It has to be one of those things where the leaders of the company truly understand these issues and truly value kind of the expertise that comes into play. I don't know. This can never be a checking a checkbox exercise, which is what I think it is. Just, you know, it's similar to a lot of the ESG type stuff. So back to your question, how do you get over that? Look, I'm not sure, but again, it has to be done top down, and you have to make sure that you are hiring kind of, you know, the best talent out there, as opposed to doing that exercise. So again, I don't know how you prevent that, but I think you know, every individual has to do the best they can do in order to make sure that this isn't just kind of one of those, you know, formulaic way of doing things. This is just an example, and I'm not gonna mention names and whatnot, but I've been at various conferences where, let's say, there'll be, you know, I don't know, 6 or 7 women that are part of the industry, on the deep tech side, and they're giving out awards, for example, and 6 of those women got an award just for being female, and I think that sends out the wrong message, right? That sends out the wrong message. Like, it's a time and tested issue. You know, for example, one talks about affirmative action in universities in the US. One talks about all these things, and I think that, again, it has to come top down. It has to be merit focused, and you know, maybe it's one of those things. Maybe it's a marketing thing. Maybe it's kind of a branding thing. Maybe it's one of those things where a lot more of these success stories need to kind of be in the spotlight. So you know, again, like, I don't know what the answer is, but it's very easy to figure out where the problems are, and kind of, and how that goes about it.
Thanks. And Marta, so something, you know, the top management, so it has to come from the top. That has to be part of the company culture, and you can do small things that can kind of break perceptions, break habits, and maybe, you know, give people that aha moment where they just realize that they were actually, you know, they have no real basis for thinking as they do. In your experience, what else can be done?
But there's many things. Work-life balance, flexibility. You mean to attract the talent? I'm just thinking about that. Okay. So work-life balance, definitely. We have diversity policies. Maybe making some of the information public, even, as Flavia was saying, a good mindset from top down. There's many things that you can do, definitely. And I was just gonna say very quickly, you know, just by listening to Sami and Flavia, another example. I won't say names either, but you know, it's funny when they call you for an event or things like that, and they ask you to maybe have someone, but that is female, from the company to present.
Yeah, but
like,
yeah.
Things.
Sorry, I interrupted you there, Marta, but I can tell you, because we do that, but it's because we want gender balance in panels, and it is much easier to find panels where you could have all men, and that's where I kind of say, no, can you please nominate a female colleague? It's not because but we genuinely do want to have that balance, and sometimes the only way of doing that is by saying, you know, who's a female colleague that can come in on behalf of your organization and really give that. So it's I understand what you're saying, but I can tell you, when we do it, it is the intent and the effect also when you have panels that are diverse, is optically different, but it's not just about the optics. The optics are important though as well. So thank you for that. I'm sorry I interrupted you there. Is there anything else you wanted to say? I just wanted to defend ourselves. No, I'm joking. I want to say that maybe there's another way to see that as well. Is there anything else that you wanted to say there on Marta? Because I think that you did also talk about policies, so things that make it easier for women to be part of the conversation. Yeah.
Of course, maybe mentoring programs. There's many things.
Okay.
You can do.
Brilliant. And then just in the
Tanya,
Q&A,
can I just say one thing? Sorry, one last thing. I understand Marta's frustrations with that, but I also think it's, you know, kind of what you're saying. I think these things are important, because what you're doing is you know, the norm. We talked about this the other day, kind of that Harvard study that showed, like, they put like 100 video pictures, and founders pitching their company and investors kind of who would allocate money to whom, and it was obvious that female founders that would have a man next to them and that were smiling would get the dollars, as opposed to just a woman just being normal like any other guy would be, and they would get the funding. So I think by doing these types of things and having more women present, it kind of changes the narrative and kind of redefines the normality of kind of what's already in the system. So it's not because it's just that the system is messed up, and these types of things kind of help to normalize something that is currently not the norm, and that's the only thing I wanted to add.
But it's a really interesting point. I'm just going to before I read out Daniela's comments here in the Q&A. There's a study that basically looked at, I think it was I can't remember whether it was the NASDAQ. I think it was the NASDAQ actually, where they did an analysis of based on they asked AI to rank the CEO's attractiveness. So they gave it, Lord knows what parameters they fed in, but anyway, it's probably if your face is symmetrical. They did say what the parameters were. Your face has to be symmetrical, blah, 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 4 other things. And they found that the perception of success was absolutely correlated to the degree of attractiveness of the CEOs. This was men as well as women, by the way. So we're hardwired to see attractiveness as a signal of success, which is really quite worrying. But anyway, Daniela, you're not familiar with fundraising, but Aniv's suggestion would be to make the first evaluation author blind, meaning that the technical content is evaluated without knowing the gender or ethnicity of the authors. Absolutely. I think this is what Flavia was also saying with the CVs. Axel, question for Laure: can QuIC start a workstream on women in quantum? Laure, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, this is this was exactly my point. I think this was we should go beyond March the 8th. And again, we have a role here to play in terms of visibility, networking, obviously, etc. And by the way, in these 2 panels, this is important to see that we face more or less the same issue or the same findings. That's if it goes to attracting or teams or like inside the company and external, that's more or less the same topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Isis, could you start the final slides, please, while I thank Flavia, Marta, and Sami for a wonderful panel. I think we're going to be able to pull out quite a few kind of diamonds, not so much in the rough from the panel, and we'll be posting those so everyone can share and learn from your experiences and your expertise. Before wrapping up finally, I did want to say that we and BluSpecs are working now with the European Commission on the development of a gender and diversity index that's going to be looking at a range of indicators that signal how much diversity there is in the European innovation and investment landscape. So we look forward to sharing more details of that with you in the future. We've literally just started. We had the kickoff in Milan this week. And this is the website. There is just a placeholder. Here you have the survey that I mentioned of women in quantum. Those of you that haven't answered, please do answer, because again, this is grist for the mill. These are data points that we like to share and use for advancing kind of more equitable, but also a more effective and more performant quantum ecosystem. It is about performance. We need to access talent in all shapes, sizes, colors, whatever adjective you want to use, and we look forward to having you with us as part of that journey. Finally, thank you to all the colleagues that have been involved in the preparation. Thank you, of course, to Laura's president of QuIC and to the colleagues at QuIC, but most of all, thank you to the panelists for sharing your insights and taking the time to be part of this on International Women's Day. We know you're super busy. Sami, thank you for virtually stepping off the plane and joining. And we look forward to sharing some insights with you, as I say, through social media and through our other communication channels. See you next year. No, see you before next year. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.